Hey there. Welcome to episode 8 of the Boob Report podcast, powered by Helix Interactive. Today, I'm hanging out with Donna Mazzatelli. She is the founder of Writing with Donna and Mary Dissonance Press. She is an award-winning writing coach, editor, and publisher. She helps writers connect to their unique core voice so they can share a message that is crafted with heart. Donna's life experiences, which include 2 cancer diagnoses and significant personal family loss, have helped grow her heart and compassion, as well as her intuition. She is joining us today to discuss how we can shift our thinking when it comes to battling cancer. Let's get started. All right, and here we go. So welcome, Donna. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really, really honored that you were able to be on the podcast with me.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, I'm honored to be on it, and I really appreciate you asking me to be here today. So I'm excited for our conversation.
Yes.
Definitely.
We are going to have a very, very good conversation today. We were discussing things beforehand, so I am ready to dive in. So why don't we start off, Donna, with you just telling us a little bit about yourself and how you started on this journey of
Sure.
breast cancer and, where you are
Sure.
now.
Well, so in 2007, I was diagnosed with breast cancer on Valentine's Day is when the radiologist actually called me to say that all the test results came back as breast cancer.
Mhm.
And that just, threw me for a loop. I mean, we had moved to Colorado from California when I was 50 years old, and we'd been here for a little over a year at that point, not quite a year and a half. And so this was all new territory for sure for me, on top of not that involved with the community, especially the medical community as well. And it was really frightening. And of all people, and I know I hear this all the time, others say this, that like, wow, how did this happen to me? I eat, and this is my story. I eat organic, I took care of my body. I was not overweight. I exercised. I really thought I was doing all of those things that keep you healthy. And that had been our lifestyle for a long time. So to get a diagnosis was really, it was devastating. Admittedly devastating.
Now, just out of curiosity, what type of breast cancer were you diagnosed with?
So it was sorry, let me think for a second.
Okay.
Estrogen and progesterone positive.
Okay.
It was a slow growing cancer, so it wasn't an aggressive cancer. It was not, HER2 new or any of, the ones that are more aggressive, I guess I would say. I mean, for sure. And then it was really a postmenopausal cancer. So it definitely, that's what's in my lineage, is postmenopausal cancer. And so, so I had gone through menopause about a year before. I mean, I had finished the process about a little over a year before that. So, yeah.
Right. Well, as doing this podcast and talking to doctors and reaching out to people, a lot of times, if just the lay person, I don't think we realize exactly how many different types of breast cancers there are, because,
Right.
Every time I meet someone, I'm hearing a new cancer. Mine
Right.
was invasive lobular carcinoma, and mine started at the milk ducts and worked its way back in. And like yours, mine was a very slow moving cancer. When I was finally diagnosed, they told me that I had it anywhere from 5 to 10 years. And I was having mammograms, at least every other year. So it was what my surgeon referred to as a sneaky cancer. It wasn't something that was as easily detected.
Yeah.
So that's amazing to me. I mean, the so many different types of breast cancers that are out there.
Well, and I think there's a whole lot more since 2007 too. So
Yes.
it's like it just keeps more discovered. And as you say that, I mean, it was interductal. I mean, it was definitely, I mean, trying to remember the words, but yes, it was. And it did really it started in the ducts as
Mm.
well. And again, slow growing. And ultimately, I didn't have any lymph node involvement.
Oh.
So I was really fortunate.
Mm.
I wasn't a candidate for, I chose not to have a lumpectomy. That was a choice that I made. And then ultimately, after surgery, when we saw the extent of it, I then said, oh my gosh, should I have gone in that direction? And rather than have a mastectomy.
Mhm.
However, it was in multiple spots. So I would have been left so disfigured that, it was very small, but yet in spread enough in different places that it would have, I would not have been happy with the result for sure.
Right.
So, and I had opted not to do a lumpectomy for other reasons. I mean, there were more reasons than just, what it was more about what I would have to do in terms of other treatments
Right.
beyond.
Right.
So, and I wanted to avoid having to go through radiation
Hmm.
because I wouldn't have to based on having a mastectomy with no lymph node involvement. I didn't need chemo or radiation afterwards. I was,
Right.
very fortunate in that regard.
Yes, yes,
So,
I was
yeah,
as well. I didn't have to do that. I did have to have several lymph nodes removed, but they were pretty confident that, all the margins were clear. And again, same thing. I feel incredibly lucky that I didn't have to do
yeah,
chemo or radiation. But now you mentioned that the cancer was in your family, a
yes.
post-menopausal.
Yeah, my maternal grandmother had postmenopausal cancer. She was from a very big Italian family from Italy, and there were four girls altogether, and one other sister did have cancer. I don't know if hers was postmenopausal or not. I'm not sure. She, she and my grandmother ultimately died from theirs that they had metastasis, and so yeah. So, but it did start in postmenopausal. Now this is way back in the 60s, so it's a lot, obviously back then they knew a whole lot less than we know now.
Oh,
So, and then
yeah.
my mother, actually the year before I was diagnosed, had was diagnosed with it was postmenopausal as well. And so, and she was a perfect candidate for a lumpectomy and was able to do that. So, yeah. So it's really, in terms of the girls in each generation, it's been a 50-50. Up to my generation, it's been 50-50 of
Wow.
the
Yeah.
women. So,
It's fascinating to me, the genetics that are involved. I get no cancer in my family whatsoever. I mean, my grandmother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer when she was 93 years old in the nursing
well,
home, you know, eh, probably a few months away from passing. It's not what killed her, but what she died from, but
mhm,
she was diagnosed with it. So that was one
right,
of the reasons they wanted me to get genetic testing, as well as the fact that my father is adopted. So I didn't have any health history from that
sure,
side. But other than that, no history
right.
at all.
Well, and back then and back then, I mean, it sounds like it's not decades and decades ago, but BRCA1 and BRCA2 were the ones that they tested for. And so I did do the test for those two and,
Mhm.
came back negative. So it came back that, it's not in our gene pool. However, I do understand that there's more that they're testing for genetically now. And so I have not gone through more. Probably I have two daughters, and so probably they will at least one of them will need to do the tests and find out if
Right.
I don't know, or I will, I'm not sure, do further tests, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's to me, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I'm at 5 years,
Mhm.
and 5 years ago, when I was going through this, they had 27 different
Wow.
genetic levels they were looking at, 27. And since then, I think that they've added some more. I couldn't honestly tell you how many. I'd have to do, a little research and talk to a couple of geneticists, but there was 27 when I got mine done.
Wow.
And I didn't hit any of the markers, which I was grateful for, but it was like, well, okay, but I still have it, you know,
Right.
but
Right.
At least I knew that, my brothers, siblings, nieces, things like that, wouldn't get
Right.
it. I mean, I'm blessed with two amazing kids, but I'm stepmom, also known as bonus mom. I love that word so much better.
Yeah.
So I didn't
Yeah,
have to
that's
worry
great.
about that for them. So that was the one good thing about being the bonus mom, is that I wouldn't, if it was in my genes, I couldn't pass it along to my daughter.
Right.
But yeah, it's fascinating the amount of, advancement that they've made in testing, and, being able to work with, I'm meeting more people that did not have to do chemo or radiation,
Right.
which when I had my experience, I didn't realize that that was even an option. I mean, once I got my diagnosis, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have chemo and radiation. So, and
Right.
I think that scared me more than the actual cancer did, was having to go through all of that.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, at the beginning, I did not, until they did, um, we didn't do the sentinel node biopsy at the beginning of biopsying. And so we knew that would be something that when I ultimately had surgery, they would take nodes, and including the sentinel node, and find out. So at the beginning, I didn't know what I would be in for if I opted for surgery. So I went on a 4-month quest to find an alternative way out. I just really, because I was so scared of chemo and radiation. I saw what it did to my father had cancer, had a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I saw what it did to my grandmother, who had had a radical mastectomy. And of course, it was like, we're talking decades and decades ago, when it was, the chemos were horrible, the radiation was extensive. So it was just very different. So, but that's what was in my mind, because that's was my experience of watching two people that I loved, so much, go through such horrid experiences. So,
Mhm.
so I was looking for any way out, and ultimately I did opt for surgery. I came to
Yeah.
realize that that was the way to go. And then fortunately, yeah, I didn't have to do anything additional. So,
Right.
um, yeah, it is a um, it's a frightening process when, or it's a frightening diagnosis. It can definitely can be, and just really then be a frightening process going forward. So,
Mhm.
yeah, but
Well, to kind of continue on with your story, because your
yeah,
story is very unique. Obviously, getting that sort of diagnosis on Valentine's Day, I can't even imagine. But then we fast forward a few years, and you have another journey to go on.
yep, 2014, 7 years later, I get goosebumps actually, just as you said it and I'm
Mhm.
saying it. And another diagnosis on Valentine's Day, a very different diagnosis. So I had been dealing with rectal bleeding, and what I thought was maybe irritable bowel syndrome. I saw a doctor who didn't find anything. I then went to the ER on a Thanksgiving weekend, and they said, you have hemorrhoids, and you'll have to deal with, take care of it. And here's a referral to a um, colorectal surgeon.
Mhm.
And there were some things going on in our personal life with in our family. And so I decided to, since it's just hemorrhoids, I'm just gonna get through what's going on in our family over the next, through the holidays and everything. And so I did not go back to the doctor until February. Ultimately, I had an appointment on February 7th, and then we had the opportunity to go to do a surprise birthday for a friend in Florida. And so I changed my appointment a week later. And so I go in for my appointment, and as soon as he does an exam, he says, I hate to tell you this, but it's cancer. I mean, I know this is cancer. We're going to go through the tests to find, we're going to do a colonoscopy and find out whether it's anal or colon cancer. Anal, rectal, or colon, depends on how far up it goes.
Uh-huh.
And so I can't tell you that right now, but this is definitely cancer. And that, what I hadn't realized is, when I went back to the doctor, I went to the doctor on Valentine's Day, on
Mhm.
February 14th of 14. So I was again diagnosed on Valentine's Day.
That
So it was crazy. And then that cancer requires surgery is the last resort because they don't want to take away your sphincter muscle if they don't have to.
Yeah.
So after diagnosis, it was anal cancer. And so the treatment is chemo and radiation.
Oh,
That is the course of action. By
mhm.
then I'm in my late 50s and I'm older. I feel like I can't, and this type of cancer, it's like, it can move and it was clearly a tumor.
Mhm.
So it was one tumor. Fortunately, it was contained. It was one tumor and that's where it was. But initially we didn't know all that. And so, I didn't feel like I had time to play around with other, looking at other courses of action. It was like I needed to, allow myself to go through this.
Right.
And so I did. It was quite a journey. And I have to say that as a result of both cancers, I've come to see cancer differently and I've come to see treatment differently. I do feel like even though chemo and radiation, they're not an easy walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination, and they cause sometimes a lot more harm to people. I mean, definitely. Um, but at the same time, it is the best that Western medicine has to offer at this time.
Right.
So, what I had learned with with my breast cancer is to take an integrative approach. So rather than an alternate approach, taking an alternative approach, I took an integrative approach and mixed Eastern and Western. I mean, I mixed other modalities. And
Mhm.
so I did the same thing the second time. It was just a different road to have to walk.
Right.
But yeah, today I can't say that I don't have fear around cancer because I think I'd be lying. But
Mhm.
at the same time, I don't have the horrid fear that I had when I first was diagnosed with breast cancer. I
Yeah.
don't, I mean, and I really do feel like cancer came into my life those two times to wake me up.
Mhm.
I and so I see it as cancer really was a friend and ally in my life as opposed to an enemy. Um, and I believe that wholeheartedly. So I just wish that we could start to change our language around, you know, I feel that being told that we need to battle cancer and fight it is just such a disservice to us
Mm.
as human beings. Because sure, we don't want cancer to hang around. But if it is a wake up call in our lives, either to put our lives in order because it's the end, coming to the end of our life, or if it's to wake us up to say, you know what, we can start living our lives a bit differently than we were, you know, with more self care, with more self awareness,
Mhm.
with more self love and self compassion. That cancer can teach us those things. And so
Yeah.
that's what I've come to see. Yeah. So it's like I don't want to battle it. I didn't want to battle it.
Mhm.
The second time, definitely, I was not in that mindset anymore. I realized that if I'm battling it, I'm battling me. I'm battling my own body,
Mhm.
um, because that cancer, it is cells that were in my body that went awry. I mean, they went crazy in a
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
but they were my cells. They're my body. So when I'm fighting it and battling, I'm fighting a part of me instead
Exactly. Yeah.
instead of
Well,
trying to lovingly release it.
right. Well, my doctor told me something very interesting that I didn't think about either is everyone has cancer cells in their body. It's
Yes,
whether or not they set up home base, in a
that's right.
certain area of your body. But every single one of us has some sort of cancer cells floating around in our body.
Exactly.
And I think that leads us to a very interesting conversation you and I had before we hopped on the podcast is why do we focus on the cancer and the fear? You were bringing this up with, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Instead of focusing on the cancer, why don't we focus on the health, the
Right.
preventative? And I
Right.
think that's brilliant. I love that. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, so I've seen, yeah, I've seen some posts. There's quite a few people posting right now on Facebook about that this is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month.
Hmm.
And I, didn't really think about that in the past, realize it, but I do know some people who have had ovarian cancer. So now I'm seeing the connection to that on Facebook. And then
Right.
next month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I have struggled with Breast Cancer Awareness Month for probably since right after I had breast cancer, if I think back, because it's like, why are we focusing on the cancer? And of course, the awareness that the way that we're approaching it is you better go get yourself checked because, you could have cancer and you need to get it dealt with. And if you avoid it and ignore it, you're setting yourself up, for more problems. Now,
Hmm.
I'm not saying that this awareness doesn't help people find out. I know it does. I know it does help, that people who this reminder helps people go and get themselves checked. But what if we did it from took a different, even put different words to it and said that this is Ovarian Health Awareness Month? And so make sure to get do your checkups and everything. Make sure you're doing your annual exams and, getting your pap smears and whatever else is necessary to check to make sure that you are healthy. What if we said that? And then
Right.
if we dealt with, okay, we find out we have cancer. Okay, now we deal with cancer. And I'm not saying that fear won't come up because it will,
Hmm.
but it's just, I think, a different way of going about it so that we don't start from fear and inadequacy and that we maybe are screwing up and didn't do something that we should have done.
Hmm.
um, as opposed to, what, I'm just going to support taking care of myself every year and make sure that I'm doing my checkups. Same with a mammogram or however a thermogram or whatever somebody does to check their breasts, or breast exams. Because
Yeah.
my breast cancer was found in my annual checkup by the doctor doing a breast exam. And what I thought was like, I don't know, an inflamed duct or something. That's what I thought it was. It
Uh-huh.
turned out that it was actually a lump. I mean,
Yes.
so it's like if we do those things, but what if we do it from the idea of breast health awareness?
You
And
know,
that we
I
just
I
focus
just
on our health.
absolutely. I love that. I think if we approach it from more of a preventative, if you will, I think that our society as a whole tends to focus more on the negative and the fear of things. And I agree with you. I mean, I had, before I got my diagnosis, I would go in and get my mammograms and I had dense breast tissue. So I always had to go back and get a second mammogram so that they could
Yeah.
just make sure, absolutely sure. And it had been a couple of years in between my last mammogram when my, you know, um, general practitioner, my doctor that I go see once a year for my checkups and, annual and all that good stuff. She was like, all right, it's been a couple of years, probably need to get in there. I know it's not your favorite thing. I get it, but let's just get it over with. It's all good. They've all come back, fine. Let's just get it done.
Hmm.
And I was like, you're right. You're right. So, I go and then I have to go back for the second one. After the second one, I get a call for a third one. The little warning bells start going
Yeah.
off. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, I went in with a total positive attitude. I'm like, I just get this done. Let's do it, get checked out because I'm pretty good about going to the doctor once a year and, doing my thing. But yeah, I think the whole communication, the wording, how we approach it, if we do it in a more positive light, I think that we could get more people to go in. And as with most cancers, if you catch it early,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
so
Exactly. I
yeah.
think so too. So I really, the other piece, like I said earlier about battling, that we use that kind of language,
Mhm.
like, he's got to fight, she's got to fight. They're not fighting hard enough.
Yeah.
Somebody is starting to die and yet we're saying, fight, you need to fight, you can get through this. You can, and so then of course the person feels again inadequate in some
Mhm.
ways, can feel that way. and
Right.
also have to really do, everything, put their energy into convincing other people, like if it's really time to let go, convincing people that it's really time for me to let go, which is hard for us as loved ones to hear that when somebody is saying it's really time. But
Hmm.
what if we could honor that more? I mean, what if we could honor that as well, instead of, making people feel that if they're not fighting, they're not doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's so much for us to look at in the way we look at disease and in the way we manage disease. And, I mean, I think we just have such a huge, deep fear of death. I mean, our society avoids death at all costs, it's like,
Yeah.
so that feeds into this, which makes it then harder to try to look at what's happening from a more loving um, place with more
Hmm.
compassion for ourselves and each other. So,
I
so
think
that's
so.
I have written my first memoir that is about to come out. I have a special holiday edition coming out for a special event, and it'll be available to people who connect me privately. But it's officially coming out on Valentine's Day,
Yes.
2022, which is, as we've just talked about, is significant. But I
Hmm.
really, I go through my journey, I go through my journey all the way through this, and which starts with being in total fear and anger and why me?
Hmm.
And, how can this be happening to me? And being furious with everybody and not wanting to hear anybody's opinion. No one's opinion, including my husband's, and my closest friends. And so going from that place to where I land ultimately with being in this place of acceptance and being able to look at something from a more loving place and try to let go of fear as much as possible. Um, you know, it it's I almost lost my marriage because of how I how I behaved through
I,
my first breast cancer experience.
hmm.
Um, and and as a result of that, years later, and it's like, what's interesting is we had recommitted to each other the day before. There's quite a journey that we've been through, and we had recommitted to each other on February 13th, the day before I got diagnosed with anal cancer.
Oh
So
man.
we had been recommitted already, but we did a letter where we signed it. It was kind of, we
Hmm.
just decided to do something very non-traditional, and we made commitments to each other, and we signed it, and, made it this really special moment, not knowing that the next day, we were going to start on this journey together. So my story is about my journey with cancer as well as my journey with my marriage.
Hmm.
So they're kind of, entwined.
Well,
So
I think
yeah,
that's so beautiful that you're sharing that, because I'm sure that somewhere there's a woman who's going through the same thing, who is struggling and trying to accept the fact, if you will, that she has breast cancer, and angry, and it may be causing some problems with their significant other, their spouse, loved ones. So the fact that you're so willing to be open and transparent and share that, I think, is really beautiful, Donna. I love that. um I've tried to be as open and transparent as possible. And I still struggle with it. Depression. I mean, I just was in such a deep depression. A lot of it was related to the pain and then survivor's guilt for me,
yeah,
because I
yeah,
had two women that almost died, going through that, I know, that are pretty important in my life. And then I did lose a friend, a woman that I've known for years. Our children went to school together, and
mhm,
she passed away last summer. And she
mm,
was one of the ones that, she just reached the point, she was done. She was done
yeah,
fighting. She was done being through, put through all the medical procedures and things like that. And I think, there were other people that were really upset and just wanted her to keep fighting. And I think her soul and everything in her, she just couldn't do it.
right.
She was done.
It was time.
So
Yeah,
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 and there's nothing, I mean, my heart breaks for her family because they don't have her anymore. But then I have to really reflect on what it is she wanted and the hell she was going through,
Right.
with the
Right.
treatment.
Yep. I totally relate to the survivor's guilt part. I do. And I just recently lost one of the authors that I'm a publisher. And
Mhm.
so I published his book. And after we published his book, he, was re-diagnosed with cancer. And then he was re-diagnosed another time. And so, I mean, we've known each other since like 2012.
Mhm.
And I just was at his memorial service less than 2 weeks ago. And it, it's so it comes up again. It's like, why him? Why
Right.
am I still here?
Mhm.
We can make ourselves crazy with those questions though. And I think at the end of the day, what I try to always return to is I am so grateful that I am here. And
Mhm.
I'm going to do, I did negotiate with the universe in a sense when I was diagnosed the second time. And that is, if I'm allowed to live, I promise, I commit, not promise, but I commit to doing my work in the world, to
Mhm.
serve in whatever way that I'm called to serve, which at that point I knew was helping people write their stories and get them out. But it was,
Mhm.
it was also to get my own stories out and start sharing what I've come to know, because I feel like there is something, for me to do in that realm as well. And so
Right.
I said, I commit to doing my work in the world, and for, my purpose for being here at this point in time.
Mhm.
And so I've been blessed with that up to this point. And it's like, okay, I just know not to say that it doesn't ever come up, but not to become complacent, as
Yes.
much as possible, to stay in, what am I to do with this day, this
Mhm.
gift of this day? What am I to do with it? And not squander it. But what can I do to I don't know, to just bring more light into the world today? That's, it's that pretty much that simple.
Exactly.
So, and even if that's being kind to my husband and smiling at him today, if he's the only person I engage with, it's like doing that instead of walking around grumpy or, whatever. So,
Exactly.
um,
I agree with you. I think that if one thing, it going through this journey, it has
yeah,
made me uh, realize how incredibly lucky I am to have my husband, to have my son and daughter, to be in the position that I'm in,
yeah,
to do this, and to, reach out and possibly help at least one other woman. If I can just
right.
help one person, I feel like it's just, that's why I'm here. But
Yeah,
I do love, my husband teases me, and so does my very dear friend. I will walk up to anybody if they have a pair of boots on or their hair looks fantastic or whatever. I'll just walk up to him and say, "Oh my gosh, you look amazing. You look
yep,
amazing. I love that dress. I love this," or whatever. And I
right.
always, I love asking people if I can pet their dog, or, cute little kids walking by in their fun little
Yeah,
outfits, and commenting on that. It's just being able to smile and
yes,
spread just a little bit of joy and happiness. I'm very
absolutely.
thankful to be able to do that.
I do that as well. I really, I mean, I smile when I'm in public, when when I engage, when I see anybody, it's like, smile. And if there is something, not necessarily jumping to the compliment of, but if there's something to say to somebody, um, I will. I don't hold back. Sometimes people kind of look at me like, you know, or especially when you talk to children. I mean,
Mhm.
I understand that people are wary of,
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
talk to children, but I try to do it from a safe distance, and then say something, like if they're playing, comment on that, and just something that just makes them smile even bigger because they know they got noticed.
Right.
It's like,
Yes. I think that's
we
huge.
all love that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we do. I mean, you and I are just sitting here smiling away, talking to each
Exactly.
other. And it's amazing. It's amazing what just smiling, can do for you. But
Yeah,
well, we have covered so much, and I'm so
we have.
excited. Just very quickly, just tell us a little bit more about your book and
Okay.
what exactly is happening with that.
Okay. So the book is called Mosaic Heart: Pieces of an Unfinished Life. And so I am coming out with a special edition in November for a special women's conference I'm attending It will be a holiday edition, so it will be available if people want to contact me directly, that they could buy it from me directly and I can ship it out.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I don't have the details on the cost or anything yet because that's all still being figured out. But the official book will be published and then available online at your local bookstores. That will be in February of 2022 with an official ISBN and everything attached. So you'll be able to buy it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, go order it at your local bookstore, order it through bookshop.org. It'll be available. Yeah.
And that'll be February 14th.
Yes.
2022. Okay.
That is right.
Valentine's
Yes.
Day. Yes.
Yep. Exactly.
So what we will do is we'll have all of this information in the show notes, any links and everything like that you can reach out to Donna. You can, get on the list, whatever you need to do for the book. And again, we are so incredibly grateful to you for joining us on this podcast. And I look forward to having you back. I would love to have you back after the book is published. And
I would love that.
We can talk more about that. I think that would be amazing to have you back.
I would love that. Thank you.
Really dive into the book.
And I can also, I know that I am not the only one who has a story to share.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you said, you have a story. It's like, that's part of my work is to help others get their stories out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm available in that way too. So you'll have my links to my website and everything.
Yes.
But I'd be happy to speak about that as well, because, I think we live in a time when we get to share our stories in all different ways, whether it's take the stage, put out a book, self-publish it, publish through a small company. It's like, there's just so many options today that, doing a podcast, being a guest,
right.
So many ways. And we need our stories. We need each other's stories. Absolutely. So that we can see we're not alone.
Yes. I love that. Yep. We need each other's stories. I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a beautiful statement. I love it.
Thank
All right,
yes.
Donna.
Thanks, Michelle.
So much. I appreciate
so
everything. And thank you all for joining us today. This has been absolutely amazing.
Thanks. Yes, it's definitely been juicy.
Yes, it has. Okay. Talk about being a superhero. I'll say it again. I find it very therapeutic to hear how someone has taken a diagnosis of cancer and turned it into something that is so incredibly helpful for others. Thank you, Donna, for being on the podcast. You will find all the information on Donna and her writing and Mary Dissonance Press on our website, www.theboobreport.com/podcast, episode number 8. And a very big thank you to all of you for spending time with us today. Be sure to like and follow us, and definitely share the podcast with your friends. You can become an active listener and support this podcast by clicking on the podcast link on our website at www.theboobreport.com. Thank you again, and take care.